On March 27, 1872, George Smith read aloud a flood story carved into clay 1,000 years before Genesis was written. Britain was stunned. But it was the year 1929 translation of older Sumerian fragments that allegedly crossed a line, because after that rumors spread that the Vatican sent guards to a scholar's lab. No record proves it happened. So what made these tablets dangerous enough for the story to survive? A hush fell over the Society of Biblical Archaeology as George Smith stood before a packed hall on March 27, 1872. In his hands, a clay fragment from the ruins of Nineveh, its cuneiform script silent for millennia, now promised to speak. Smith's voice trembled as he read the story aloud. A divine warning, a colossal flood, a lone survivor building a boat, the release of birds, the world remade. Listeners recognized the echoes instantly. This was not Genesis. This was centuries older. The room erupted. Victorian newspapers called it the greatest archaeological surprise of the century. Headlines splashed across Britain and Europe. Prime Minister Gladstone himself had attended, drawn by rumors of a revelation that might shake the foundations of faith. Smith's own reaction became legend. He reportedly leapt from his seat, overcome, exclaiming that he was the first man to read that after more than 2,000 years of oblivion. The clay tablet, catalogued as Tablet 11 of the Epic of Gilgamesh, told of Utnapishtim, a survivor warned by the gods, who built a vessel to save life from a world-destroying flood. The parallels with Noah were impossible to ignore. The animals gathered, the birds released, the sacrifice after the waters receded. But here, the gods regretted their decision. The story's roots reached deeper than any biblical text. For the Victorian public, the implications were immediate and unsettling. Was Genesis a retelling of an even older tradition? Did sacred history have a forgotten ancestor? The press demanded answers. Scholars scrambled to compare the lines of cuneiform with Hebrew scripture, searching for the boundary between myth and revelation. In that moment, the flood story was no longer just a matter of faith. It became a question of evidence, authority, and the power of the past to unsettle the present. Stephen Langdon's arrival at the ancient mounds of Ur and Kish brought a new layer of depth to the flood story, one that could be touched, measured, and dated. In the 1929 excavation season, Langdon's team uncovered a band of silt at Ur, 8 feet thick, pressed between layers of broken pottery and reed matting. Radiocarbon analysis fixed this clean, artifact-free deposit to around 3,500 BC. The same year at Kish, a 5-foot stratum of clay, distinct from the everyday river mud, showed up in the lower levels. Its date, roughly 2,900 BC. At Shurapak, the city tied to the flood hero Ziusudra, archaeologists found a horizon of river-borne sand and silt, marked by a unique mineral fingerprint from the Euphrates, and dated to about 3000 BC. Langdon pored over both clay and cuneiform. The tablets from these sites, fragmented but legible, told of a catastrophic flood, a divine warning, and a survivor who built a vessel to save life. In the Eridu Genesis, Ziusudra of Shurapak receives a secret from the god Enki. A flood is coming, and only a great boat will preserve the seed of humanity. The Atrahasis epic and the later tablet. 11 of Gilgamesh echo the same pattern: divine regret, a chosen survivor, the gathering of animals, the sending out of birds, a sacrifice after the waters recede. Genesis 6-9 would later mirror these motifs almost line for line, but the Sumerian and Akkadian versions stood centuries ahead in the archaeological record. The physical evidence from Ur, Kish, and Shurapak pressed a simple, unsettling question. Were these layers the fingerprints of the flood behind the world's oldest stories? Each tablet, each stratum, forced institutions and believers to weigh the possibility that the earth itself remembers a disaster older than scripture. In the hands of Langdon and his peers, the myth took on the weight of mud, clay, and radiocarbon, blurring the boundaries between legend and geological fact. Pope Pius X did not wait for scholars to settle the matter of ancient flood stories. In 1907, his encyclical Pascendi Dominici Gregis thundered against what he called the errors of the modernists, those who dared compare scripture with the myths of vanished empires. The warning was not subtle. By 1910, every Catholic priest, seminarian, and theologian was required to swear the anti-modernist oath, vowing to reject any claim that sacred texts were shaped by older traditions. The oath's language, drafted by the Holy Office, named the danger directly. Scholars must not suggest that biblical accounts were borrowed from external mythic parallels. Behind these declarations stood a deep anxiety. Letters from the Vatican's Secretary of State, Cardinal Merry del Val, reveal concern that the growing publication of Mesopotamian tablets, especially those recounting a flood, could be used to argue that Genesis was not unique, but one echo among many. The 1907 document Lamentabili San condemned as error the idea that biblical stories might be literary adaptations. Internal Vatican correspondence urged Catholic scholars to present the flood as a divinely ordained event, not a borrowed tale. The Church's official stance left no room for ambiguity. Any suggestion that Genesis drew from the likes of Ziusudra or Utnapishtim threatened the very foundation of doctrine. In this climate, even a rumor of Vatican guards sent to silence a laboratory did not seem impossible. The stakes for the Catholic hierarchy were not just academic, they were existential. Across the floodplains of ancient Sumer, memory pooled not just in riverbeds, but in language. The Eridu Genesis, etched in cuneiform centuries before the first Hebrew scribe, describes a council of gods, a warning whispered to Ziusudra, and the construction of a vast boat. The Atrahasis epic, written in Akkadian, follows with its own tale of divine frustration, a chosen survivor, and the careful gathering of animals. Tablet 11 of the Epic of Gilgamesh brings the bird release motif to the fore. A dove, a swallow, a raven, each sent out to test the receding waters. Genesis 6-9, composed much later, preserves the same sequence: divine warning, ark, animals, birds, sacrifice, covenant, layered with new theological meaning. These parallels are not coincidence. Archaeologists trace the roots of these stories to a window between 4,200 and 3000 BC, a period marked by a spike in catastrophic flooding across Mesopotamia. Sediment cores from Ur, Kish, and Shuruppak reveal thick bands of silt laid down in a single violent event. Paleoclimate data points to the so-called 4.2 kilo-year event, when rainfall patterns shifted and rivers swelled beyond memory. Oral traditions, carried along trade routes and temple rituals, knitted these disasters into a shared story template: divine wrath, a chosen survivor, the remaking of the world. The motif of sending out birds, the sacrifice after the storm, the promise from the divine. These are fragments of a cultural memory, shaped by real environmental trauma and retold until myth and history became inseparable. Each tablet, each layer of mud, suggests that the flood story was never just a tale. It was a way for ancient people to explain the chaos of nature and to find order in its aftermath. Rumors swirl in the shadows of 1929 Rome. A headline from Corriere della Sera whispers of Vatican guards dispatched to a laboratory, their mission shrouded in secrecy. The name Carlo Bianchi, a supposed scholar at the center of the storm, flickers in and out of the record, impossible to pin down, yet persistent in the retelling. But when researchers comb the archives, the trail grows cold. The digitized pages of Corriere yield no such story. Vatican police ledgers for July 12, 1929 list only routine inspections, no armed entry, no confiscation, no mention of ancient tablets or a midnight intervention. The British Museum custody logs show the flood tablets never left their shelves, and the Penn Museum records are silent on any laboratory drama. Even the Vatican's own personnel files offer nothing but a handful of unrelated Bianchis, none tied to archaeology or the Swiss Guard. The supposed chain of events, guards at the door, a seized translation, a silenced discovery, collapses under scrutiny. What remains is the echo of a myth, fueled by the Church's historic anxiety over the flood story's origins and by the enduring image of hidden knowledge under lock and key. The real tension lingers not in the archives, but in the uneasy space between what is known, what is feared, and what the world is willing to believe. Sediment cores from Kish, and Shurapak tell a story written not only in myth, but in mud and clay. Each city reveals a distinct flood layer laid down rapidly between 3500 BC and 3000 BC. Radiocarbon dates from charcoal and reed fragments, confirmed by independent labs, cluster within this 5-century window. At the silt horizon reaches nearly 8 feet, with no trace of daily life above or below, only the silent aftermath of water. Kish and Shurapak show similar bands, their mineral fingerprints matching the Euphrates, and their dating aligning with the legendary reigns of Ziusudra and Utnapishtim. Tablets unearthed from these ruins, Eridu Genesis, Atrahasis, the Epic of Gilgamesh, and Genesis 6-9, share a pattern. A warning from the divine, a boat built in haste, animals or people preserved, a flood that erases the world, and a solemn offering when the waters recede. The stories echo across centuries, from Sumerian priest-kings to Babylonian scribes and Hebrew prophets. Yet the evidence does not point to a single world-ending deluge. Instead, it reveals a sequence of catastrophic regional floods, each powerful enough to shatter cities and shape memory, retold until myth and geology became fused. Modern scholars, drawing on climate data and stratigraphy, now speak of a cascade of real disasters, river avulsions, shifting rainfall, and sudden inundations woven into a shared cultural memory. The flood, as recorded in clay and scripture, is not just one event, but a palimpsest of survival, loss, and the human need to find meaning in chaos. Each tablet, each layer of silt, challenges the boundaries between faith and fact, leaving us with questions that refuse to settle beneath the surface. Each unearthed line, from the Eridu Genesis to Tablet 11, echoes the same flood, the same survival, the same uneasy questions. No Guard's record exists, but the controversy remains. How much ancient truth can modern faith tolerate? Every new fragment challenges what we think we know. The mystery endures. Share your thoughts below.